The market was loud with voices, merchants shouting, machines buzzing, the smell of smoke and dust hanging in the air. The sun burned high above. But inside the crowded bazaar the shadows seemed endless. Cages lined the narrow street, each one filled with beings taken from faraway worlds. Some cried, some stayed silent, and some looked empty, as if hope had left them long ago. In one small cage at the edge of the market sat a girl. Her skin was pale blue, marked with bruises that told stories of chains and whips. Her silver hair hung in tangled strands across her face. She did not cry. She did not beg. She only sat with her head down, as if she already knew her fate. The traders laughed as they passed her, calling her useless, calling her broken. A glowing sign above her cage read 5 credits, a price cheaper than a meal. To the crowd, she was worth nothing. To them, she was only another piece of flesh to be moved from one master to another. Some said she was sick, some said she was weak. None cared enough to ask who she was. For them, she was just an object. For her, it was another day of being unseen. The voices of the market rose higher. A slaver barked at the people, offering strong workers, rare fighters, skilled mechanics. He shouted the prices like he was selling fruit. The crowd cheered when a tall beast-like alien was dragged out, chains rattling as buyers fought to raise the bid. But the girl in the corner cage was ignored. Her sign glowed weakly, 5 credits. No one wanted her. Then he came, a man, human, tall with a scar across his cheek and eyes that looked like they had seen too much war. He walked with slow steps, his coat heavy with dust, his boots pressed against the sand as if each step was chosen. People moved aside without thinking. There was something about him, something quiet but strong. His name was Kale, though no one in this market knew it yet. Kale stopped at the cage. His eyes rested on the girl. She raised her head slightly. Her eyes were bright, even through the pain, glowing faintly violet against the light. For a moment, the noise of the market faded. For a moment, it was only Kale and the girl. She looked at him, and he looked at her. The trader saw him staring and laughed. Not that one. Human, she is broken, worthless. You want a fighter, you want a worker, you want something with strength, not this scrap. The crowd chuckled, agreeing. 5 credits. The trader spat. You could buy her cheaper than a drink. Kale said nothing. His eyes did not leave the girl. She lowered her gaze again. Too used to being dismissed, too used to being called broken. But something stirred inside him, something heavy. He reached into his belt and pulled out a small pouch. He tossed it to the trader. The coins clinked together. 5 credits, he said, his voice low but steady. The trader blinked, surprised. The crowd gasped and then roared with laughter. The human buys the broken one. They mocked, wasting money on trash. A few spat on the ground. Some shook their heads. They thought him a fool. Kale stepped closer to the cage. The trader unlocked it with a shrug, shaking his head as he muttered about humans and their strange hearts. The door creaked open. The girl flinched as the sound echoed. Kale crouched low, his eyes level with hers. Come, he whispered. His voice was not harsh, not like the others. It was calm, almost gentle. She hesitated. Her small hands trembled. For years she had been pulled, pushed, forced from one cage to another. No one had ever spoken to her like this. She wanted to move, but fear chained her to the ground. What if this was another trick? What if he only wanted to laugh at her too? Kale extended his hand, his scarred fingers open, waiting. The market was watching. The crowd wanted her to fail. They wanted to see the broken girl, too weak to even walk. She lifted her eyes again. Her violet gaze met his. For the first time in so long, she saw no cruelty in someone's eyes, only belief. Her heart beat fast. Her breath caught. Slowly, she reached out. Her hand touched his. His grip was warm, steady. She rose to her feet, stumbling but standing. The crowd grew silent for a moment. They had expected nothing, yet here she was. Kale stepped back, guiding her out of the cage. His coat shifted as he moved, covering her with a shadow from the sun. The trader laughed again, shaking his head. A fool and his credits, he said. But his voice sounded weaker now. The crowd muttered, some angry, some confused. Kale ignored them all. His eyes stayed on the girl. She stood beside him, still shaking, still afraid. But she was outside the cage. For the first time in years, she was free of bars. She looked at him, searching for the reason, and he whispered again, just for her. You are not broken. The words echoed in her heart. She had heard many names, many cruel voices, but never this. Never words that gave her something back. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to step forward. The market noise rose again, traders shouting, buyers calling. But in the corner where a cage stood empty, a story had begun. A human had seen worth where no one else did. And in the eyes of the alien girl, something fragile and new started to grow. The crowd did not fall silent for long. Laughter rolled again through the bazaar, sharp and mocking. The human wastes his credits, one shouted. He takes a ghost for a pet. Another jeered. Some threw scraps toward the cage as if to remind the girl of her worth. The marketplace had always thrived on cruelty, and today was no different. But Kale ignored them. His hand still held the girl's trembling fingers, guiding her out. She stumbled as her bare feet touched the hot stone. Her body was weak, but the shock of freedom was stronger than her exhaustion. She blinked at the sunlight, squinting as if the world outside the cage was too bright for her eyes. Kale did not let go of her hand. He walked with her past the trader, his voice calm, his steps steady. The trader shouted after him. She will not last the night. She will bring you nothing but trouble. But Kale did not turn back. The girl's legs wavered. She moved like someone who had forgotten how to walk. Kale slowed his pace, adjusting to her. He noticed how every sound made her flinch. The rattle of a chain, the bark of a merchant, the crack of a whip striking somewhere behind them. Her body tensed as if expecting pain. Kale kept his tone low when he finally spoke. What is your name? For a moment she did not answer. Her lips parted, closed, then opened again. A whisper escaped, almost carried away by the noise. Lyra. Her voice was soft, fragile, as if it might break if she spoke too loud. Kale nodded once. Lyra, he repeated, giving weight to the name. He spoke it not as if it was worthless, but as if it mattered. She looked at him, unsure, but the way he said her name sent a strange warmth through her chest. The bazaar's crowd began to fade behind them as Kale led her down a narrow street. The noise dimmed, replaced by the sound of wind scraping against old stone walls. Lyra's steps were shaky, her breath shallow. She wanted to believe she was free, but every corner still felt like a trap, every shadow like a chain waiting to fall. Kale stopped near an old fountain, its water long dried. He guided her to sit on the edge. He pulled a small flask from his belt and offered it to her. She hesitated, eyes darting between his hand and his face. He nodded gently. Drink. Her fingers trembled as she took the flask. The water tasted strange, too clean, too real. She coughed but kept drinking. A drop rolled down her chin and she wiped it quickly, as if afraid of wasting it. Kale watched in silence, his gaze not of pity, but of quiet study. He saw the way she clutched the flask like treasure, the way her shoulders curled inward as if she was trying to disappear. He had seen soldiers break in battle, men lose their will. But Lyra, she was different. She was still here, despite it all. Lyra finally lowered the flask. She looked at him, confusion in her violet eyes. Why? She asked. Her voice shook, but carried a heavy question. Why me? Why would you take me? Kale leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. He held her gaze. Because you are not broken, he said again, firm, steady. Each word carried weight. He did not say it for comfort. He said it as truth. Lyra's breath caught. No one had ever spoken like that. Every voice before had called her useless, damaged, worthless. And yet here he was, saying the opposite. Her chest ached, as if the words cut through years of chains. But before she could speak again, the sound of boots echoed down the street. Harsh voices barked orders in the distance. Kale turned sharply. His hand moved to the weapon strapped across his back. Lyra tensed, her body remembering fear faster than hope. 3 slavers emerged from the shadows, their armor dull, their faces cruel. They had followed Kale from the market. One sneered. 5 credits for our property. Another spat. You think you can just walk away with her? Lyra shrank back against the fountain, her hands shaking. Kale rose slowly, his frame tall and unyielding. His hand rested on the hilt of his blade. His voice was low, dangerous. She is not your property. The slavers laughed, drawing their weapons. Their steps echoed closer. The heat of the street seemed to thicken with tension. Kale shifted, placing himself between Lyra and the men. His scar caught the light, his eyes hard as steel. The slavers thought him mad. They thought him weak for choosing a girl worth nothing. But Lyra's heart pounded as she looked at his back. For the first time, someone stood in front of her, not behind her. For the first time, someone was ready to fight for her. The air grew heavy. The sound of blades being drawn rang sharp. The slavers circled. Confident, Kale tightened his grip. His voice dropped into a growl. If you want her, you'll have to take her from me. Lyra's breath hitched. The world had always told her she was worthless. Yet here was a human, ready to fight 3 armed men just to protect her. And as the first slaver lunged forward, Lyra's fear twisted into something else, something she could not yet name. The slavers lay on the ground, groaning in pain. Kale stood over them, his blade still warm with the fight. His breath came heavy but steady. His coat was torn, and his arm bore a fresh cut. Yet he stood tall, guarding the girl behind him. Lyra's wide eyes shimmered in the fading light. She had watched every strike, every move, and she had seen something she had never seen before, a man who fought not to own her, but to free her. The street grew quiet after the clash. Only the distant hum of the bazaar drifted through the wind. Kale cleaned his blade and slid it back into its sheath. He looked over his shoulder, his voice calm. We cannot stay here. Lyra nodded, though her legs still trembled. The fight had shaken her, not because of the danger, but because someone had stood in danger for her. She followed Kale as he led her out of the market. Their path wound through narrow alleys, the stones worn smooth by years of trade and blood. As they moved, Lyra clutched the flask Kale had given her. She held it tight as if it was the only proof that this moment was real. Her voice broke the silence, soft but clear. Why do you help me? Kale glanced down at her. His eyes were sharp yet steady. Because you deserve it, he said. Simple words, spoken like stone. Lyra lowered her gaze, not knowing how to answer. No one had ever told her she deserved anything. Not water, not freedom, not even a name. The city walls rose ahead, metal gates scarred from years of raids. Kale guided her through a side exit, bribing a guard with a quiet toss of credits. They stepped into the open desert. The air changed, no longer heavy with smoke and noise, but dry, sharp, and endless. The horizon stretched wide, painted in red and gold by the dying sun. Lyra's breath caught. She had not seen open skies in so long. The cage had been her world, the bars her sky. Now the desert lay before her like another universe. She stumbled forward, her bare feet sinking into sand. Her knees almost buckled, but Kale's hand steadied her. They walked for hours, the silence broken only by the crunch of boots and the hiss of shifting sands. Kale carried a pack, worn from years of travel. He gave her bread, dry and plain, yet Lyra ate it like a feast. Each bite was heavy with meaning. Food not stolen, not thrown, but given. As night fell, the desert turned cold. The stars burned bright above. Lyra had never seen them this close. She tilted her head back, eyes wide. She whispered, "It is beautiful." Kale sat nearby, setting a small fire with practiced ease. He nodded, his gaze fixed on the flames. When the fire crackled, Kale finally spoke again, his tone low. "Tell me, Lyra, how did you come to this place?" Her voice was faint, yet filled with weight. She told him of the raids on her village, of soldiers tearing through her people, of chains and markets, of masters who saw her as weak. She told him how each one sold her cheaper than the last, until her price became less than a meal. She stopped often, her voice breaking. Kale listened without interrupting, his jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists. When she finished, there was silence. The desert wind whistled through the rocks. Lyra lowered her head, ashamed of her own story. She whispered, "I am broken." Kale's voice cut through the night, sharp yet steady. "No." She looked at him, startled. His eyes reflected the firelight. "They told you that to keep you small. You are not broken. You are alive. That is worth more than any credits." Lyra felt a strange warmth stir in her chest. It was unfamiliar, fragile, but it was there. She turned her gaze to the fire, letting his words sink into her heart. But far beyond the dunes, other eyes were watching. A drone buzzed silently in the air, its red lens blinking. It recorded every movement, every word, transmitting it back to the Slaver Guild. They would not let their property go so easily. Kale sat with his back to the fire, scanning the horizon. His instincts told him danger was near. He had fought too many battles to believe in easy nights. He reached for his weapon and rested it beside him. He did not speak, but Lyra noticed. She hugged her knees, a shadow of fear returning. The fire burned low. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, her body weak, her spirit torn. Yet in the silence, a thought repeated in her mind. His words, "You are not broken." They echoed like a shield against the darkness. The desert night stretched on, and though she feared what would come, for the first time in years, she felt something close to hope. But high above, the drone turned and sped away, carrying her secret and her freedom into the hands of hunters. The desert stretched wide, silver under the twin moons. The fire had died, and the wind howled across the dunes like a lonely song. Lyra sat close to Kale, wrapped in his coat, her violet eyes catching the starlight. She felt safer near him, but a shadow still clung to her heart, a feeling she could not name. Kale stayed awake long after she closed her eyes. His hand rested on the hilt of his blade, his ears trained to the sound of shifting sand. Every soldier learns the silence before danger. He knew it well. The night was too quiet, even for the desert. When dawn broke, they moved again. The sun rose harsh, and the sand burned underfoot. Kale guided Lyra across rocky ground, seeking shade under jagged cliffs. Lyra followed, her steps unsteady. Every mile drained her, yet she did not complain. She carried years of pain already, and this was only another weight. By midday, they found an old ruin, walls broken by time. Kale led her inside, dust rising with each step. He checked the shadows, then motioned for her to rest. Lyra sank against a wall, breathing hard. Her hair clung to her face with sweat. She looked small, fragile, but her eyes still glowed faintly. Kale noticed, though he said nothing. As Lyra closed her eyes, Kale scanned the horizon. His instincts were right. A shadow moved across the sky. A drone, its lens red, circling like a predator. Kale cursed under his breath. He grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her to her feet. "We need to move," he said. Lyra stumbled, confused. "Why?" Kale pointed upward. "They found us." Her blood turned cold. The word "they" was enough. She knew who hunted her. She had lived in their cages too long. They left the ruins quickly, running across the sand. The heat pressed down, the air thick with tension. Behind them, engines roared, ships cutting across the horizon. Dust clouds rose, carrying the banners of slavers. They were coming, faster than the desert wind. Lyra's chest tightened, her legs weakened. "Kale, I cannot," she whispered. Her body wanted to give up. The desert had no mercy. Kale turned sharply, his voice iron. "You can, keep moving." His grip on her arm steadied her. His eyes burned with defiance. The first shots cracked across the sand, beams of red light exploding against the dunes. Kale pulled Lyra behind a ridge, his blade drawn. His eyes scanned the soldiers advancing. 5 at least, armored, armed with rifles. They moved in formation, confident. Kale's jaw tightened. He had fought worse, but not with someone to protect. He turned to Lyra, her face pale with fear. "Stay behind me," he ordered. She shook her head. "They will take me again." Her voice trembled. Kale met her eyes. "Not while I stand." The battle began. Shots rang. Sand burst into flames where beams struck. Kale charged forward, his blade slicing through the air. Sparks flew as steel clashed against metal. He fought with brutal precision. Every strike meant to end. His scarred face twisted with focus. He moved like a storm. Lyra crouched low, hands over her ears. Each sound of battle shook her chest. Fear crawled through her veins. Her body screamed to hide, to vanish. Yet something inside her stirred, a warmth, deep and burning. Her fingers trembled, light flickering faintly across her skin. Kale fell back, 3 soldiers pressing him hard. His blade clashed against theirs, but he was outnumbered. His coat burned where a shot grazed him. He staggered. For the first time, Lyra saw him falter. Her breath caught. She could not let it happen. She stood, her hands glowing brighter. Her fear twisted into strength. Her voice broke the air with a cry. A wave of energy burst from her palms. A blinding flash of violet light tore across the sand. The soldiers screamed, their weapons shattering, their bodies thrown back like leaves in the wind. Cale froze, his eyes wide. He turned to see Lyra standing tall, her body shining with alien power, her hair whipped in the energy, her violet eyes burning like fire. The slavers stumbled back, terrified. They had called her broken, but what stood before them was anything but weak. Lyra fell to her knees, the light fading. She gasped for breath, her body trembling. Cale rushed to her side, pulling her close, his voice low, filled with awe. Lyra, what was that? Her eyes fluttered. I don't know, she whispered. She had never felt it before, never let it free. Cale held her steady. He looked at the soldiers retreating into the dunes, fear in their eyes. He realized what her captors had hidden. They had feared her, not because she was weak, but because she was powerful. The desert wind blew again, carrying away the smoke. Cale tightened his grip on her shoulder. You are not broken, he said, voice fierce. You are more than they ever knew. Lyra looked at him, tears filling her eyes, for the first time. He almost believed it. But above them, another drone circled, blinking red. The slavers would not stop. They had seen her power now, and they would come with everything they had. The desert had fallen silent again. But it was not peace. It was the kind of silence that came after violence. Heavy and sharp. Cale knelt beside Lyra, his scarred hand resting gently on her shoulder. She was still breathing hard, her body shaking from the energy that had burst out of her. Her violet eyes glowed faintly, fading with each blink. He whispered, easy. His voice was steady, though his mind raced. He had seen soldiers wield fire, machines burn cities, but never had he seen power like hers, and she had no idea what it meant. Lyra leaned against him, her breath short. I did not mean to, she said softly. It just came. Her eyes filled with fear. They will hunt me now, more than before. Cale tightened his jaw. He looked out at the desert, at the horizon where shadows of ships still lingered like vultures. Let them come, he said, firm. You are not alone anymore. They walked until the sun began to sink. Cale guided her into a canyon carved by old rivers. The walls rose high, offering shade and cover. He built a fire and laid out supplies from his pack. Lyra sat close to the flames, her thin frame wrapped in his coat. She kept her gaze low, her voice hesitant. I do not understand. Cale glanced at her. What? She raised her eyes slowly. Why do you protect me? I am nothing. I was sold for less than bread. Her words carried no bitterness, only the weight of belief pressed into her for years. Cale leaned forward, the firelight catching the scar across his face. His voice dropped low, almost a growl. Do not say that again. Lyra flinched, startled. But he did not stop. They called you broken because they feared you. They wanted you to believe it. But I see you. Lyra, you are worth more than all of them. Her lips parted, trembling. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Her eyes blurred with tears. She had long forgotten how to cry. She pressed her hand to her chest, as if to hold his words there. Cale softened his tone. You asked why I protect you. He leaned back, his gaze lost in the fire. Because once, I failed to protect someone, and I will not fail again. Lyra studied him quietly. She wanted to ask who. She wanted to ask what wound lived behind his eyes, but she stayed silent. Some stories were not ready to be spoken. As the fire crackled, Cale shared pieces of his own world. He told her of the wars on distant colonies, of soldiers who fought with steel and fire, of how humans were known for standing when no one else would. Lyra listened, her eyes wide. Each word painted a picture of a people who refused to bow. When he spoke of humanity's flaws, she tilted her head. He told her of greed, of anger, of mistakes carved into history. But then his voice grew steady again. Still, when the world says we are finished, we rise. That is what it means to be human. Lyra's chest ached with something new, admiration, perhaps even hope. She whispered, and you see me as one who can rise too. Cale met her gaze across the fire. I see you as someone already rising. The canyon echoed with silence, heavy but warm. Lyra pulled his coat tighter, her heart racing. She wanted to believe him, but the chains of her past still clung tight. Yet his words cut through them, one by one. Suddenly, The night broke with the roar of engines. Shadows swept across the canyon walls. Lights pierced the darkness. Kale leapt to his feet, his blade drawn. Lyra gasped. Ships were descending. Heavier, larger, far more armed. From the sky, mercenary banners glowed. Soldiers dropped in lines of fire, armored, disciplined. They had seen her power, and they wanted her. Lyra's chest tightened. Her hands shook. She whispered, "They are coming for me." Kale stood firm, his eyes blazing. "Then we fight." Lyra trembled. "Kale, you cannot stand against them alone." He looked back at her, his scar lit by the fire's glow. "I am not alone." Her breath caught. His words pierced her fear. She pressed her hands together, the faint glow stirring again beneath her skin. This time, she did not shrink from it. This time, she would not let them cage her again. The mercenaries landed, their boots shaking the canyon floor. Their leader stepped forward, his voice cold. "The girl belongs to us. Hand her over, and you may live." Kale raised his blade, his stance unbroken. "She belongs to no one." Lyra stood beside him, her eyes glowing brighter, her voice stronger. "I will not go back." The soldiers lifted their weapons, the canyon filling with tension. Kale and Lyra stood shoulder to shoulder. For the first time, Lyra felt not like prey, but like someone ready to fight for her own worth. The leader gave a signal. The air erupted in fire. The canyon lit with fire. Blasts rained down, turning stone to dust. The mercenaries advanced in lines, their rifles glowing with energy. Kale pulled Lyra behind a boulder as sparks burned the air. His blade gleamed, his stance fierce. Lyra's heart raced. She had never seen such weapons up close, never felt the ground tremble beneath so many boots. Her hands shook, glowing faintly. Kale leaned close, his voice steady despite the storm. "Listen, they want you afraid. Do not give them what they want." She nodded weakly. Her chest ached, but his words settled like anchors inside her. Kale rose from cover, charging into the storm. His blade cut through the first soldier, sparks flying as armor split. He moved like a shadow, striking fast, never stopping. Lyra crouched, watching him. Her breath quickened with every strike. He fought not just for himself, but for her. For the first time, someone fought because she mattered. The thought burned stronger than fear. Her hands pulsed with light. A soldier broke through the smoke, weapon aimed at her. Lyra cried out, her hands bursting with a wave of violet energy. The blast struck the soldier, sending him flying against the canyon wall. The ground shook with the force. Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. She had not meant to strike so hard. Kale turned, his eyes widening. He saw her standing, her hair alive with energy, her eyes blazing brighter than the rifles around them. He shouted over the roar, "Good. Do not hold back. They will never cage you again." The mercenaries regrouped, circling. Their leader barked orders. "Take her alive. Kill the human if you must." Shots tore through the air. Kale spun his blade, deflecting beams, his coat singed by fire. Lyra stepped out from the boulder, no longer crouching. Her glow spread across her skin, rising like a storm. The canyon walls echoed with her cry as she unleashed another surge. A wave of violet light ripped across the battlefield, knocking soldiers from their feet, weapons shattering in their hands. But the power drained her. She staggered. Kale caught her arm, holding her steady. His voice was fierce. "You are stronger than you know. Lyra, believe it." The mercenary leader advanced, his armor thick, his rifle massive. He sneered. "She is a weapon, and weapons belong to those who can control them." Kale stepped forward, his blade ready. "She belongs to no one." The leader fired, beams blazing. Kale deflected one, but another struck his shoulder. He staggered, pain flashing across his face. Lyra screamed his name. Her power burst uncontrolled. A pillar of violet energy erupted from her, engulfing the leader in a storm of light. When the glow faded, the leader's armor was cracked, his weapon melted. He stumbled back, eyes wide with fear. For the first time, the mercenaries faltered. Some dropped their weapons. Others ran for cover. They had come to claim something broken. Instead, they had found something unbreakable. Lyra fell to her knees, drained. Kale dropped beside her, his injured arm trembling. He pulled her close, his voice rough. "You did it." She shook her head. "I cannot control it. I will hurt you too." Kale cupped her face with his uninjured hand, his eyes fierce. You saved me. You saved yourself. That is not weakness. That is strength. Tears burned in her eyes. For years she had been told she was nothing. Now, for the first time, she felt like she was something. The canyon fell quiet. Only the crackle of burning weapons echoing. The mercenaries pulled back, dragging their fallen. The leader limped away, his glare filled with rage. This is not over, he spat, before retreating into the shadows. Kale exhaled heavily, leaning against the rock. His shoulder bled, but his grip on his blade was still firm. Lyra touched his wound, her hands glowing faintly. The energy shimmered, knitting skin. Kale winced, then stilled, his eyes softened. You can heal too. She nodded weakly. A little, her voice trembled. But it takes everything from me. Kale gave a faint smile. Then save it. Not for wounds, but for life. They sat together in the silence, the fire of battle fading into ash. Lyra leaned against him, her heart steady for the first time. She whispered, "They will come again." Kale's jaw tightened. "Let them. We will be ready." Lyra's eyes closed, her body exhausted, yet deep inside, she no longer felt worthless. She no longer felt broken. For the first time, she believed she could fight. Above them, the stars burned bright. The desert wind carried away the smoke. Kale looked at Lyra sleeping against his shoulder, his voice low, almost to himself. "You are not broken. You are everything." But far beyond the desert, the mercenary leader sent a signal. Fleets waiting in orbit received it. More ships would come, stronger, deadlier. The true war for Lyra's freedom had only begun. The canyon was scarred, smoke rising where fire had burned the stone. Kale sat against the wall, his breath ragged, his shoulder bleeding again from the last strike. Lyra knelt beside him, her hands glowing faintly. She tried to heal him, but her power flickered, weak and unstable. She whispered, tears in her voice, "I cannot. It is not enough." Kale caught her wrist, his grip firm though his strength was fading. "Do not break yourself for me," he said. "Save it. You are worth more than my wounds." His eyes were heavy but filled with iron. Lyra shook her head. "No, you saved me when no one else would. If you fall now, then everything will be lost." Above them, the sky thundered. More ships descended, larger than before. Their shadows covered the canyon like a storm. The mercenary leader returned, his armor repaired, his voice carried through a speaker. "Give her to us, human. You cannot win. She is ours." Lyra trembled. Fear tried to rise again. The same fear that had chained her for years. But when she looked at Kale, broken yet still defiant, something inside her changed. The girl they had called broken was gone. In her place stood someone who finally knew her worth. She rose slowly, her violet eyes glowing brighter than the fire still burning in the sand. Her voice carried across the canyon, strong, clear. "I do not belong to you." The leader laughed. "You are nothing without us. You are a tool, a weapon." Lyra lifted her hands, energy bursting from her skin, lighting the canyon walls in waves of violet flame. Her hair lifted in the power, her voice echoed like thunder. "I am not broken. I am not your weapon. I am Lyra." The soldiers opened fire, beams raining down, but her power surged outward, a shield of light deflecting the storm. Kale shielded his eyes from the brilliance. His heart pounded as he watched her. For years he had seen soldiers fight with steel, but never with this, never with pure will. Lyra stepped forward, each stride steady. Her power swelled, not wild now, but controlled. She raised her hands, and the air itself bent to her command. A wave of violet energy surged across the battlefield, lifting ships, breaking weapons, scattering soldiers like dust. The leader roared, charging forward with his massive blade. Lyra met him head-on. Her glow flared, their clash shaking the canyon like an earthquake. Kale struggled to rise, his voice raw. "Lyra." Her eyes locked on the leader, fury and strength blazing. She pushed harder, her voice ringing. "I was sold for nothing, but I am worth everything." The energy burst, swallowing the leader in a storm of light. His scream echoed, then was silenced. When the glow faded, his armor lay shattered, his body unmoving. The remaining mercenaries froze, fear breaking their ranks, one by one. They dropped their weapons and fled into the dunes. Ships turned, retreating into the sky. The battlefield was hers. Lyra fell to her knees, drained. Kale staggered to her side. He caught her before she could collapse, his hand pressed to her back, steady and warm. She looked at him, tears streaking her face. Did I do it? Kale smiled faintly, his scar stretching across his tired face. You did more than that. You proved them wrong. His voice softened. You proved yourself. Lyra buried her face against his chest, sobbing. For years she had been told she was broken, worthless, a thing to be sold. But now, in his arms, she believed something else. She was not broken. She was not nothing. She was everything. The desert grew quiet again. The smoke cleared. The stars above shone brighter. Kale leaned his head back against the stone, his arm wrapped around her, his voice low, steady. They will come again, but we will face them, together. Lyra lifted her head, her violet eyes glowing soft, not with fear, but with hope. Together, she whispered. The cage was gone. The chains were gone. The girl sold for nothing had risen, and beside the human who saw her true worth, she had found everything.